Anyway, let's go.
All right, guys, selling with your tenant in place. We're going to talk about it this morning. We get this question all the time as a sales agent, just before you put your property on the market, the do's and don'ts. Stay tuned. We're back.
Good morning. We're back. Take two. Yeah, a few little technical hitches. What can you do? All right. So big topic, Billy, this one. So, you've got a tenant in place. The amount of phone calls we get a week where, landlords, and rightfully so, are concerned. They're like, well, A, can I sell the property with the tenancy in place? And B, what does the property even look like? If we can't ask the tenant to move out and we can't do much to the property, which is the truth, right? You can't do a lot with a tenant in place. It's tricky to style. You certainly can't paint and carpet and do all that sort of stuff. So what do you do? And look, we sell properties all the time with tenants in place. So we've got some great tips for you guys. We've got some great advice for you. And as I said, this is a question that we are addressing all the time. So Billy, let's just first and foremost, let's talk about what happens if there is a tenancy in place. What happens with that tenancy?
Well, depending on the lease agreement, you've got two different types of lease agreements. One's a fixed term period, so it's still got duration time left before it finishes, and another is a month-to-month or a periodic agreement where it's just on a rolling contract. So depending on those two, to be honest, not a lot. And I suppose I do a lot of phone calls to the tenants as well and giving them the news the property is coming on the market for sale, and it can be really rattling for people, makes them super nervous, and understanding why, because they're not going through this very often. And so just approaching that with a bit of empathy and a bit of understanding goes a really long way. But often, there's no direct impact to them as the tenant, because the lease stays with the property. It doesn't expire when the owner sells it.
That's exactly right. So, however, on the flip side, if you have, or if a landlord / tenant has what's called an expired lease, which means that the fixed term lease has expired, it is just a 30-day termination once a property has been sold unconditionally. So not great news for the tenant.
No, but right, I know. Yeah, with notice periods, it's a funny one. You try to sort of give people as much of a heads up as you can, and to begin with, there's a 2 weeks notice of sale to say that the property is coming on the market. So that that sort of gets the ball rolling, and obviously sometimes the tenant opts to move out themselves, and so you're sort of working through that process as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what can and can't you do to a property to prepare it for sale when there is a tenant in there? Look, the truth is, guys, there's not a huge amount that you actually can do. You can't go in, we can't go in and paint because there is someone living in the property. We can't go in and carpet because there's someone living in the property. So it kind of limits what we can do. So we get creative. And I always like to favour the tenant in this situation. I'm one of those agents that I'm a big believer in. If you look after people, things are going to go a lot better. And that's definitely the situation here when you've got a tenancy in place. So I love to, with the landlord's permission, I love to offer up what's called a rental rebate for the property to assist with the selling of the property. So we negotiate a certain amount of rent off the property per week for the tenant. As an example, $100 a week. The tenant will get off their rent, and we actually rebate it back to the tenant at the end of the selling process. And in return, we ask if the tenant can please, present the property neat and tidy for the open homes. And we're talking about twice a week in most circumstances. And in return, we've negotiated for them some rent off per week.
Yeah, it's a great way to do it, and it doesn't have any impact on the weekly rent, so you're not having to adjust ledgers and things like that. It's basically just weeks added up over the course of doing open homes. So it's quite easy to keep track of.
Yeah. And look, tenants really favour that. You know, it's like, look, guys, you know, the landlord doesn't have to give you anything at all, because the truth is a landlord is entitled to sell their property at any time that they want to. But, you know, I think it's just it's a nice gesture from the landlord to the tenant. And as I said, in return, we just ask them to present that property neat and tidy for those open homes. And I've never, ever had an issue, Billy, with it. Honestly, tenants are always extremely grateful. Landlords are happy because their property's been presented better during the selling process. Lots of people also do ask if we are able to style properties while there's tenancies in place and properties are being sold. The short answer is no. A lot of styling companies don't want to put their styled furniture into properties that have got tenants in there. It makes it tricky. You know, fair enough. I understand that. So the short answer on that is actually no. But as I said, that rental rebate tends to work an absolute treat. Everyone's a winner there. And,
Yeah.
you know, the tenant gets a little bit of money off, the landlord gets their property presented neat and tidy. And as I said, everyone's a winner there.
Yeah, the two biggest impacts on a sale, particularly with price, is presentation and access. So if those are the two variables that just cannot fall into place for whatever reason, you know, that's where I guess you've got to look at your options to delay the sale. But other than that, it generally actually works really well both ways. Property's still furnished as well, you know, you're not selling it vacant, and also
Yeah.
you've still got an income, a rental income there, so you're not
No,
having
that's
to worry.
100%. So you look, I've actually got a client at the moment. I'm just signing up a listing now, and the my vendor slash the landlord is saying, well, should we give a 90-day termination to the tenant? They're on an expired lease, so no more lease in place. And she's saying to me, should we give a 90-day termination to the tenant, ask them to move out so that we can sell the property and then we can fix the property up? And it's always this delicate balance, particularly in a
Yeah.
market like what we're in at the moment, where we are seeing changes in the market. And it's very hard for us to be able to foresee what that market is going to look like in 90 days' time. So not only then have we got a vacant property in 90 days' time, but the landlord has got no rent coming in. We don't know what the market's going to look like. And then we've still got to get the trades through. So then in this instance, we need to paint, carpet, redo lights. And so that could be at least another 4 weeks. And trades, as we all know, are tricky to get your hands on. So, you know, and again, in a market where we are seeing a bit of a changing market, it's gone from a seller's market to a buyer's market. We just don't know what impact that could have in 3 months' time.
Mm.
So often I'm saying to my vendors, let's work with certainty. The rental rebate works really, really well. Let's give the tenants some money off. Let's get in there, get them tidying up the property. In return, we'll get some money off the that weekly rental for them, which will rebate at the end. And we know exactly what we're dealing with at the market at the moment.
Yeah, super simple. And if in the event that your selling agent is not the same company as a property manager, we actually liaise with all of that for you. So we introduce ourselves to the property manager, obtain the tenant's contact details, make contact, issue the 14 days notice of sale. There really is no extra work for you, so it takes it all off your shoulders.
Absolutely. And I just want to add to this one, guys, like a lot of people, when they're looking to sell their property, they naturally think to go with the managing agent. So I had this scenario the other day. I actually appraised a really good property. It was in DY, that's in a core area that I work in. And the landlord slash vendor turned around and said, actually, we're going to go with the managing agent. And when I looked up who the managing agent was, it was an agent that does absolutely zero transactions in the area. There's a high chance they actually don't know the area whatsoever. There's a high chance they don't have a database in the area whatsoever. And but they opted to go with the managing agent. We can absolutely sell properties that are managed by other agencies. We do it all the time. All the time. There is a difference between the property management department and the sales department in a real estate agency. There's a vast difference.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, we're quite experienced in dealing with, never have troubles. Actually make some really nice relationships with tenants, and obviously we're fortunate being a big rental business as well. If in the event they're looking to move out, we can often assist with that process as well. So it's a good network.
Definitely. So in short, Billy, you can definitely sell with a tenant in place. There are definitely certain things that we can do to ensure that we are getting the absolute best price for your property with the tenant in place. As a landlord, you've still got that weekly rental income. We can look at doing that rental rebate, which we rebate at the end of the selling process so that it won't affect that weekly rental. Tenants are happy, landlords are happy, real estate agents are happy. It's a win for everyone.
Win-win. Yeah, any other questions, drop us a line. Happy to help and tailor it to your situation.
100%. Have a great day, guys. Billy, have a good one. Happy birthday, Thomas.
Happy birthday, Thomas. See you later.
See you guys. Bye.